Hey guys, before we get into this week's podcast, I want to just talk about our sponsors. And the only sponsors we have is the software and the programs that we at our law firm actually use. All right. First one is Tax Help software. This is what we use for our resolution work and for pulling transcripts. We've arranged for a free trial for our members, as well as a 10% discount. So go to www.taxhelpsoftware.com. If you want to do the free 2-week trial, put in caps, all one word, tax rep trial, TAXREPTRIAL. That will get you a free 2-week trial to use the software, pull transcripts, do your offers and compromise, and just see what the software can do and why we use it. All right. You want to get through to the IRS in under 3 minutes, use call ENQ. Okay. Again, if you go to the description, we've arranged a link, but where you can get 200 minutes for $19.95, it is unbelievable. We get through to the IRS, like I said, in under 3 minutes. And we've basically figured out that we are going to save about $50,000 in billable time as a firm because of call ENQ. Now, if you want, go listen to the old podcast episode called Dialing for Dollars, where we actually review the product. It is amazing. It's what we use, and it'll get you through to the government. No problem. Piece of cake. When it comes to audits, there's no better way to document and just make your office, your firm, your client bulletproof, all right, with Receipt Bank. Right? I go out, I spend, I charge the lunch with the client, I have my travel, I simply put the receipt, I take a photo of it with Receipt Bank, it hits our books with a copy of the receipt digitally. It is there permanently, it gets booked, we save time bookkeeping, we save accounting fees, and if the auditors want to come, please feel free. We've got everything there electronically forever. All right, so go ahead, click on the link, go check out Receipt Bank, all right? Use it, get your clients using it. There's no better way, like I said, to bulletproof your return than with Receipt Bank. Now, you want to build your practice? Come in and join us inside Tax Rep LLC. Go through the training, get the marketing material, start building your practice. All right, click on the link below. Go out to Tax Rep LLC. We've arranged a discount code of CPAA19. CPAA19. That'll knock $100 off a month for the first 6 months to let you get in, get through the training, and start marketing and building your practice. All right? So if you want to really take your representation practice to the next level, go ahead. We'd love to have you join us inside Tax Rep LLC. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us on this week's podcast, the Tax Rep Network. I'm thrilled to finally get Joe Woodard to stop moving for 30 minutes and sit down with us. As an author, consultant, and national speaker, Joe has trained over 150,000 accounting professionals in areas of small business coaching, practice development, changing technology trends, and how to maximize the use of technology in their practice. Joe regularly publishes articles for Accounting Web, Insightful Accountant, and he's featured all the time on Accounting Today and in various articles, podcasts, video interviews. If you Google Joe Woodard, you'll get pages and pages of material and insights from Joe. Joe founded Scaling New Heights, a national conference which brings together over 1,000 of the world's leading small business advisors, over 100 and I think hundreds of the world's leading software developers together to cross-refer services, develop practice skills, and in addition, Joe is the CEO of Woodard Events LLC. He's been recognized by Accounting Today as one of the top 100 influencers within the accounting profession, and someone I have started to get to know. And so a couple things. First of all, Joe, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you taking the time out.
It's great to be here, Eric.
And I wanted to just open up in this forum. You and I met a couple of years ago, and it was at Scaling New Heights. It was Face the Yeti, I think was the tagline you had of that year's program. And I want to say this, and I feel like it has to be said publicly. Dude, I just didn't get it. I really just didn't get it. At the time, it was about facing down the fears over technology. That was the whole Yeti thing. And I was like, is it just me, or is this a little weird? I mean, are these people you still using like green sheets? Like I was like, okay, whatever, right? So I show up, I speak, I go to my room. All right. And I think you may have gotten a little bit of that attitude when we were dealing with each other. At the end, at the very end, as they're going to start breaking down the exhibit hall, it was Don Brolin who said, Eric, you got to go through the exhibit hall. And I walk through, and I'm telling you, I'm blown away. And I've done a number of podcasts with different people about technology, but I was blown away by just the sheer amount, not the amount of companies that do this, but what actually exists. So since then, we've adopted Receipt Bank, right? I'm shooting my receipts. They go right into QuickBooks. My controller's in love with me now because of this, instead of my dumping paper on Monday morning the following week all over her desk. It amazes me. And what I wanted, and the reason I wanted to say this is I didn't get it, but I have to say in now getting up to speed, you really were a visionary, because you were talking about this before other people were, about disruption. And the technology can be either and we're going to get into this, either your greatest friend or your worst enemy, and it really comes down to how you view it. And so that's why I was so desperate to have you take some time out, because I know you're going crazy. We got the conference in probably 6 weeks. We're going to be at Scaling New Heights, and if you haven't been, you really got to go. It's an unbelievable experience. But Joe, if you don't mind, how in the world did you get into this? I'm a little, I'm amazed that one is your vision of it and where you've taken Scaling New Heights in your program. I mean, it really is, it's running my own conference. It's amazing. But can you kind of explain to those who maybe don't know you, how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, well, and I started, Eric, as a tax preparer sitting in a cubicle doing tax returns on Lacert for DOS. And I didn't study the profession to join the profession. My BA was not in accounting. The profession found me, as often happens, and I was then going to get my CPA, and I was going to enter into practice in a licensed way, and technology distracted me. Gladly. I mean, CPA is a wonderful thing, but technology distracted me to where I'm passionate, because that firm got me involved in technology advisory for them, specifically on QuickBooks. And then QuickBooks opened up to third-party apps, and I just followed the currents of where Intuit was driving the small business industry with technology and light ERP. I jokingly called it SMB RP instead of Enterprise Resource Planning, SMB Resource Planning, because that's kind of what QuickBooks had become, especially with its ecosystem. And as I began to solve small business pain, Eric, I began to get passionate about helping people, because that's what helping small businesses are. They're helping people. As opposed to helping enterprise public companies, because you're helping shareholders and you're helping CEOs to advance their careers. And that's not bad either. It's all capitalistic world. But
absolutely,
the point is with the SMBs, you're helping an actual family who's struggling, just to provide for their family and carve out a living and forge a vision. So I got passionate about helping the people. I got passionate about helping the businesses. And the more I would do it, the more I would realize I can't meet the magnitude of this small business need by myself. I can put my own little dent. I love the phrase that you can't change the world, but you can change the world for one person, then another, then another. And I was plowing through like that. But I thought, what if I can help other people to do what I'm doing, inspire other accountants to take the journey that I took? And that got me into technology training to accountants, and then eventually a conference.
It's amazing how, and so you're not saying it, but you are. What happened at some point is, and this is the sense I've gotten as I've gotten to know you, you began to view as serving others. And that is something that happened to me, that the whole Tax Rep Network in Connecticut, Jeff, Lisa, and I almost have a monopoly on representation and resolution. Most of the former IRS, DOJ guys, they're all retired. They're all in their 70s. They're all gone. Our tax bar has shrunk. And, on the one hand, it's a great thing, right? We're very busy. I cannot help everybody. And in fact, when you and I first spoke a few years ago, I was out of my mind because I would go speak and run to my room because we couldn't keep up with the volume. I began to actually push tax rep as a means of training accountants and lawyers. And now we have hundreds of people all over the country doing this for taxpayers. First of all, they're helping themselves, right? I mean, you're making a living, you're growing your business, but you're also filling a massive need for people that don't know, that need help, don't know where to turn, and their accountants just don't do this. It's a very niche thing. But to get back to this year, you're calling Scaling New Heights, because I noticed this, the Transformative Advisor.
Right.
Can you? I'm sorry. Go on.
Well, I saw where you were going with that, so I was just going to lead in. And as soon as you say transformative, I get passionate, so I jump in. But it is the theme of this year's show. And we don't just have themes because we want to put a pretty picture on the website or make each conference have its own sort of branding stamp. We're telling a story, Eric, and it's a 4-part story. Part one of the story began in 2016, the year before you joined us, when the theme of the conference was the epic practice. And after detailing all the elements of an epic practice, including standardization and automation and specialization, and how to forge out these characteristics in your practice, we then overcame the fears of building this epic practice, which, as you mentioned earlier, does involve the fear of embracing the technology so you can automate the standardized process. Then, after we overcame our fears, we, in part 3, just focused on the machines piece, tame the machines. And as you alluded to in your opening, tame the machines means you leverage the technology so that you can avoid being disrupted by it, but rather and not just avoid it in a passive sense, but actually turn it into a tool. So you turn something that could be a negative disruption into a positive disruption. And then the second way you tame the machine is to transcend it. I know you talk to your community a lot about advisory services. And lawyers can differentiate themselves if they provide guidance in the boardroom as well as compliance to the organization. Well, in our case, we want to count as to transcend the machines or transcend the automation, do what the machines can't do and ought not do. And if you stay in that realm, you're then fully protected, but you've also, more importantly, become more transformative. And that got us into the 4th part of the story, where the transformative advisor advises small businesses in the areas of technology, operations, and financial advisory. And we like the word transformative rather than trusted, Eric, because trusted can be passive. If my client trusts my competency and my ethics and my consistency and my professionalism, then I can check the box and say, I'm trusted, I'm an advisor, therefore I'm a trusted advisor. And that is true in one sense, in the passive trust sense. But active trust says that my client trusts me enough that they will make big necessary changes in their business based on the advice that I give them. In other words, I tell them things, they make changes, they make more money, they build infrastructure, they build brand, they build culture. They are, here it comes, transformed.
It's unbelievable when you think about it, but so many folks are either ignoring the technology. It's almost like they have I hate to say it, their head stuck in the sand, but we have a very big regional accounting firm here based out of Connecticut. And the managing partner and I had coffee once, and he said, the old days where we would have 50 auditors, right? We'd throw at a public company and they would be there for weeks and weeks on end testing 2%, right? Of all of the transactions. He said, I have 2 people with laptops that can do it now in 3 days and they can test 100%.
Exactly.
And
if they're not billing by the hour, which is what we're trying to encourage accountants to do, is stop billing by the hour.
Right.
It's another way to make sure that you leverage rather than be disrupted by these technologies, because getting it done, getting the same product to the client without having to exert as much effort or as many hours and incur as much cost means that your margins go up while you're providing the service more effectively and more efficiently. And so, and I know a lot of your audience is lawyers, and you're like, well, that's good for the accountants, but I could never do it. And maybe there's some services, Eric, where they can't. You probably could comment on that better than I can. But the point is, for some, you can and you should try to, because the machines make you more effective as an attorney as well. And the more effective and efficient you are, the less time you're spending on client accounts while you're providing greater value, which means you're charging less for greater value. It starts to break the paradigm.
Absolutely. And the fascinating thing that he said before we parted, he said, here's what's going to happen. He said, the staff, quote unquote, they're either going to have to rise up and become high-end consultants, or they're going to have to get out of the industry. The old days of just staff who banged out numbers, moved stuff from one box to another, are gone. And it really is. And so I've been beating the drum, Joe, in kind of in a different way, which is, if you're doing 1040s, if you're an EA, you got to step up. You can, for me, of course, it's representation. But why not become a CFP, get into financial planning? Why not look at forensic accounting? Dawn Brolin being an example, right? Who was a bookkeeper when I met her, finished her CPA, and then at our urging went and got a CFE and is now doing almost nothing but fraud work. And there's other ways that they can do it. Embracing technology, doing more consulting with their clients, and having it less about a tax return. No, I absolutely. I'm like I said, it's a little amazing to watch, and the disparity between two groups: the ones that seem to want to try to ignore what's in that exhibit hall, and the other folks who are in there embracing it, and they're transforming their own practice as well as that of their clients.
Well, it's a transform yourself in order to allow yourself to transform others. But when you're talking about the two groups, couldn't agree with you more on that too. And there are three professions that need to be watching this very carefully. The managed service providers, the technology consultants is the fancy word for the IT, person that comes and runs your Ethernet cable, but it's bigger than that. So you've got your IT consultants, the MSPs. You've got the accounting professions, which is what I would include the bookkeepers, and then there would be the lawyers. And all three of these need to be watching technology in ways that are unique to us, and that it impacts the way we produce services for our clients. But here's the real kicker. A lot of what's hitting the industry with technology has the power to displace us, to go directly to the customer and bypass the professional. And there is a great book I would encourage everyone listening to this podcast to read. It's called The Future of the Professions. It's by Daniel Susskind. He wrote it with his father. His father is a lawyer. And so it was written very much from the perspective of the impact of technology on the legal profession, but it covers all the professions. It even goes all the way into medical, where doctors are being disrupted. And it talks about instances where artificial intelligence with robotics are performing surgeries under a doctor's supervision already. So not in the United States, but it's happening in France. So it's all detailed in the book. So understanding that this technology is coming and it can do some of the work that we're presently doing, and I can almost get into the mind of your listeners and go, wait a minute. There are compliance issues. It requires licensing. There's credentialing involved in order to deliver certain types of services. So we're protected by the credentialing. We're protected by the law. And that is true, but they address that in the book too. And they say the law always follows the practicality. I mean, if eventually, just paint a scenario for the tax preparers and the tax attorneys, if eventually all transactions are done on blockchains, which it will be, it's not an if, it's a when. So when eventually We're transacting everything on blockchain, which can be cryptocurrency, can be non-cryptocurrency, but it's virtual currencies run by governments or otherwise. US dollar put on blockchain. Those are definitely strong futures. When that happens, every single transaction is validated as it's happening. So it's not a double entry accounting system for me that I have to reconcile to somebody else's double entry accounting system in another place. I have one piece, they have one piece. It's called distributed ledger. With distributed ledger, all transactions can then be scraped by the IRS, where very baseline technology doesn't even take a massive amount of sophistication. They can just call their buddies at H&R Block or TurboTax, and they could scrape the transactions, prepare the tax returns, and then tell you what you owe. If we were to paint a future like that, what would be the role for the tax preparer, for the tax attorney? Now, in your role, Eric, through the roof. Could you imagine the disputes with the IRS so they become the preparer? But wait a minute, call Eric. There's something I miss here. They scraped wrong. So certain areas could skyrocket, and other areas could plummet. And rather than looking forward, which always has so many variables, that the future I painted could look 10%, 30%, 50%, like what I just described. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. Something's coming simply in that nature, though. But let's look in the past, because the past is 100% clear. Right. Managed service providers are a disrupted profession. They were the first to be disrupted by the coming technology, because the cloud, by its very nature, disrupted the person putting in a local area network. And I was just on the phone 2 weeks ago with one of the leaders within the MSP community. He's sort of the Joe Woodard of MSPs, if you will. And he said that his folks are struggling. Many of them had found private jobs in the same sector. Many of them have had to open up businesses in other sectors because they don't have an occupation anymore. And I'm not trying to be Chicken Little here. I hate fear mongering, but at the same time, if my full-time job is to watch this stuff, read about this stuff, I spend hours, dozens of hours with different developers every single year, going through their products and studying what's happening in their roadmaps, their vision, many of it under NDAs. I'm in the halls of Intuit as a contractor, have been one for 15 years, was there just last week talking with a lot of their leaders and product managers under NDA, knowing where their product is going. Eric, if I'm one of the folks that can see around a couple of corners, this isn't fear mongering. This is just a caution. Watch what's happening, walk these show floors, embrace this technology, poke your head up and look around too, so that you can be more like the MSPs who have thrived by becoming cloud managers of technology. And you can adapt and not just remain relevant, but be so much more relevant. The guys that got it and the ladies that got it on the MSP side are killing it in this new world because they adapted.
And I am going to check out Susskind's book, but also I read, I watched the TED Talk first, and then I read the book by Jay Samit, Disrupt You. Mm-hmm. And it's coming disruption is going to hit everybody at some point. And I think you've nailed it. Is it one of these where you look at it and it's fear, or can you look at it and say, what can I do with this now? If, and for instance, if the bookkeeping is going to get automated, can you now get more bookkeeping done for your clients? And now you can focus on other things. Can you, to my mind, I keep calling it elevate. Can you move up and become a higher end consultant? Because now you can get more done automated.
Yeah, we call that being the master of the back office and the boardroom, right? But the mastery of the back office now takes so much less effort. And we put a big emphasis on adaptive capacity. Most of our folks tell us, Joe, we don't have time to focus on developing financial, operational, or technological advisory skills because we're so busy doing our fundamental job, our day job, if you want to call it that. And I get that. and there's money to be made right now. As we say in Georgia, we make hay while the sun is shining. The sun is still shining very bright, and we're making a lot of hay. But that's the problem, is that the present can distract you from the future through success and through a heavy workload. So you just nailed it, Eric. If you could embrace the technology, so it's a progressive tame the machines. First, you leverage them so that you can create greater efficiencies and greater adaptive capacity. Then you transcend them because you have the adaptive capacity to invest in yourself in learning. And a little bit of learning goes a long way, the way we frame it: financial, operational, and technology advisory.
So, Joe, for the accountant or the attorney listening to this in their car or wherever they're listening to this, obviously you mentioned Susskind's book. I mentioned the Disrupt You book. It sounds like Susskind is more on point, whereas Disrupt You is simply to kind of give you a global perspective on, why this is going to happen and get your mindset around changing it. What would be some first steps for I can give you some suggestions. Like, if you're listening to this, frankly, go to Scaling New Heights and go check out the exhibit hall, because, and look at it as, Eric Green is getting his receipts and he's handing it to the controller, but that can be automated. Even our resolution work is automated. Transcript is now automated. I don't have my staff doing it anymore. It's automated. My staff, therefore, have gotten EAs, and I've watched my firm become I hate to say higher end, but they're now becoming consultants to our clients. First of all, they've gotten good at it, but two, they don't have to be sitting there tied up in the mundane that I used to spend hours a day, every day, on the phone to the IRS. Not anymore. I don't pick up the phone and call the IRS, almost never. It's now between their automation and ours, but they're through their portal and everything else. But for Joe, so for the person listening to this, where do you begin? I'm listening to you and I said, Joe, oh my God, I think you're right, or at least it makes sense. Like, I'm sitting here in my accounting practice looking at piles of stuff all around me. Where do I start?
Well, and the best place to start, and because we knew everyone needed a place to start, we have a website called thetransformativeadvisor.com. And make sure you get the in front of it, thetransformativeadvisor.com. There is a 4-part webinar series that breaks down what I was talking about in this podcast interview over 4 hours, a deeper dive on the technology, operational, financial advisory, where we brought in some people that have been doing this way ahead of the curve in each of those areas, actual practitioners and authors on the areas. Then there is a podcast series called the Transformative Advisor Podcast. You can find it on all the platforms. You can listen at the website. There's an article series that has its inaugural article up, and I'll be publishing more of those. And of course, there's the conference, and it can all be discovered at thetransformativeadvisor.com. And one last thing on that, Eric.
Yep.
Even though the conference theme is the Transformative Advisor, the conference comes, the conference goes. We don't repeat a conference under a theme ever. We will continue to talk and teach to Transformative Advisory at not only future conferences, but also on the podcast series and in the article series, which will endure and continue. And we might even have a few encore webinars. So bookmark it, thetransformativeadvisor.com, and stay plugged in there.
And for everyone listening, I will put a link in the description to the transformativeadvisor.com. And so, Joe, I know our time is short here, but so the conference is around the corner. I think it starts June 16th. What can attendees expect from this year's conference versus the ones you've had previously?
Well, first, more training than we've ever offered. We've broken the 200 mark on 200 unique breakout sessions. So that by itself is a massive differentiator. And a lot of people would go, well, sustaining quality at that level is difficult. Yes, it is difficult. We spend 18 months curating the training for each conference, which means that we're presently working on the training path for our 2020 event. And we do that because we want to maintain a breadth of training plus the highest level quality. So we're one of the highest rated shows, as well as being one of the most advanced shows, while we are also one of the most comprehensive shows. Now, so you're providing some of that training. So there is a tax update, tax representation track. You're doing some of it, and Latino tax pros are doing some of it. Don't let the Latino throw you. It's not just Spanish speaking. It just happens to be Latinos who are teaching about the tax for everyone, because we all have one tax code. And they're a lot of fun. So they're doing the tax updates. You're doing tax representation and some other topics. Dawn's coming to talk about fraud and fraud prevention. But there are a wide range of training sessions on a wide range of technologies too. And of course, the technology, operational, and financial advisory. So the training is very robust, unlike any other show I've seen in the US. The second big one is the community. When you come to Scaling New Heights, you are family, and everybody will see you instantly as family because you're there and you're wearing the badge, but then they'll reach out to you, get to know you. And if one of your beefs is you go to these conferences, you sit, you learn, you go home, and you're just not a professional relationship builder, and you see everybody else hugging necks in the hallway, and you see everybody else having these meaningful conversations, and you're kind of a wallflower. I get that. I go to conferences from other people's universes, and that's even my case. They don't know me over there at other universe. So we built a connections wall. First, our folks are super friendly and welcoming, but second, we built a connections wall. So some of your folks do tax representation work, just as an example, anything differentiated, anything unique, Dawn with the fraud. They would put that on the connections wall. And then over the course of the 4 days, other people would come up needing help with the IRS in representation for one of their clients, or they would come up because their clients are dealing with an internal controls issue. They would find Dawn, they would find you, whatever the need set is, whatever the specialized benefit is to working with you. And then our moderator of the connections wall will pair the two of you up so that you leave Scaling New Heights, not only servicing that client's need, but with a new professional alliance. You're not going to get that anywhere either. And then there's the Genius Bar. At the Genius Bar, we've assembled folks that you can't find elsewhere on the exhibit floor. Genius is all over that exhibit floor. They're developers, innovators, program leaders. But when they don't have a booth, we give them a spot there. We promote the schedule so that you can pick their brain at the Genius Bar when they don't have a booth to go to. And our main stage this year not only has our Intuit executives speaking, including the head of US QuickBooks and the head of QuickBooks Pro Advisor program, but we're bringing in some of the most innovative, forward-directed people, including Simon Bailey, who talks about how to create distinction in the way you deliver client services. He's a veteran of both Disney and Ritz-Carlton in this area. So if you listen to him, you might become the Ritz-Carlton or the Disney of tax representation, accounting services. Wouldn't that be nice?
No, absolutely. And I know we have, the transformativeadvisor.com, but Joe, before I ask my last question, how else can our listeners connect with you if they want to?
Well, they can definitely go to that website and find us. There's an About Us link right there, but they can also send an email to info@woodard.com, and either one of my team members will take it. Or if it needs to be addressed by me, then they'll route it over to me and I'll personally handle it. info@woodard.com or thetransformativeadvisor.com will get you there too.
All right. And so, Joe, last question. I'm new. I'm going to Scaling New Heights this year. I'm going to be honest, the show can be a little overwhelming because of just how much there is. What would you tell the new attendee if they were going to focus on one thing, what they should focus on?
Well, find the one thing before you look at our training schedule, because then you've got a compass for that map. And then once you've determined what you want to accomplish over the next 12 months, reverse engineer from the training, right, to what you're trying to achieve in your practice. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is make sure you're there by Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, where we have a new attendee orientation. There will be about 300, 350 people in that breakout session. I personally lead it, and we give you the map of the conference experience, what to expect over the 4 days. Everybody says it makes a really big difference. And then, for those that are registered by May the 15th, we have a orientation webinar, Making the Most of Scaling New Heights. That's a good one to go to as well.
All right. No, Joe, thank you. And listen, it's always great to talk to you. I'm psyched to be speaking at this year's conference. So everyone listening, I will put the links below to the transformativeadvisor.com, the email info@woodard.com. I'm also going to put the one for Scaling New Heights, so you can go check out what Joe has been talking about and the upcoming conference. Don Brolin and I are actually, I think, kicking off this year's conference. We're doing a 4-hour offer and compromise workshop. So not only 2 hours on how to do offers, but we're going to be doing 2 hours of case studies. So that my thought, and Don and I talked about this, when people leave that workshop, they should feel confident that they can go back and actually get a client in the door and that offer out the door where it's going to be accepted. So I'm very psyched. It's in Salt Lake City, which is just beautiful. There's a ton of education. The keynote folks you have are unbelievable, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So, Joe, like I said, thank you for taking the time out, and we'll definitely get you back on because we can go deep diving into a lot of the stuff you hit. Thank you, and again, thank you for inviting me to the conference this year, and I'm going to see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you in June, Eric.
All right, thank you, and everyone listen, thank you for listening in. And we'll check us out again next week. And go out, check out those links below. Go check out Scaling New Heights, and we'll see you there.